It's 12:02, so I'm going to begin the webinar. Welcome to everybody for coming, and thank you for being participants in our fourth of the six-part marketing webinar series on Direct View to Revenue. For those of you new to the webinar, I'm Hilary Gasha. I run the on-site team at Insight, and we have a strong team here which we'll review quickly, providing marketing services to our portfolio companies, helping to raise the bar and making you aware of new trends and best practices in the industry. Today's subject is going to be specifically product marketing's role in driving revenue. This is an area that is done, I would say, less well across the portfolio than many other areas, and that's because it's not easy to do and it's hard to have a framework that makes sense, and it requires a lot of effort and certainly a deep understanding of products and a deep understanding of buyer personas and why people buy and the value proposition. I'm very pleased today to welcome Martha Aviles and Maria Cabalosa, both of whom work at Drilling Info. From my point of view, Drilling Info does product marketing exceptionally well. They have a very robust framework and a robust strategy for doing this, and they've dedicated resources to doing it, which many of our companies don't do, thinking that it'll happen by osmosis, or that the folks who are doing Marcom or lead gen will also be able to do this as part of their day job. And so I'm thrilled to have the two of them join us and share with you what they do. I'm going to hand over to Maria. Maria will describe how they think about product marketing. But Maria, for those folks who are new to this webinar series, it would be helpful if you could just give a quick background on what Drilling Info does and therefore why you decided to create a strong product marketing environment. And so handing the controls over to you.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks, Hilary. So happy to be here and joining you today. Yeah, and to answer your question, Drilling Info provides data and software for the oil and gas industry and ancillary industries such as the finance industry to figure out how to evaluate drilling assets, how to decide where to drill, how to drill, who owns what property, and if you think about it, we have digitized the subsurface of the earth, or rather of 90+% of all oil producing parts of the country. And so yeah, it's a technology driven platform that serves primarily, I would say, financial, oil and gas exploration and petroleum producing companies, land, mineral rights companies, midfield, et cetera, et cetera. And so for us, product marketing was a critical function to fill. When I arrived here 3 years ago, we didn't have really any of the functions, and the first one that I focused on was demand generation. For those of you that maybe joined us in the last of these webinars, we talked about demand generation and the importance of delivering campaigns, all of the channels through which we send messaging and materials in order to make people aware and understand and measure how those demand generation activities perform. But the key for us is product marketing is every bit as important as demand generation, if you will, given that we view product marketing as the content, as the activity that describes the value proposition for the solutions and services that we provide. And so product marketing, working hand in hand with product management, determines, you know, a product naming hierarchy, product definitions. What is a product? What is a feature? What is a delivery channel? What do you sell? What do you not sell, but is an important element of the thing that we provide? So when we first started here, you know, 2.5 years ago, looking into product marketing as a company, we didn't have any of that mapped out. And Hilary, you're absolutely right. This is not something that somebody can do on top of their day job. And so we absolutely have, brought in a very strong team who are experts at product marketing and experts at working with our internal stakeholders, whether they be product people, sales people, other industry experts, speaking with our customers and figuring out what is that value that each of those products provide, and as a whole, the solution that Drilling Info provides. And and Martha will talk about this in a minute, one of the biggest challenges that any company faces when you talk to your product folks or your technical folks, they tend to focus on features rather than on benefits. And so it is the job of product marketing to have the customer in mind and translate all of the products that we deliver into a benefit that we provide to a customer. And so that's really the role. And then developing and delivering a whole suite of customer-facing and internal-facing materials and assets that describe the value of the company. So product marketing is critical for us. We absolutely have a strong team. And so with that, happy to take any questions at the end. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Martha Aviles, who leads product marketing for us. Martha.
Thank you, Maria. All right, let's start with the product marketing goals. So this slide covers our 3 core audiences: customers, prospects, and sales. Ultimately, as Maria mentioned, it is our job as product marketing to be able to get our customers to understand what the value is that we create for them and their companies, right? If you can do that well, you can easily expand your user base, meaning you're going to get more people wanting to use your platform and more people wanting to use more of your products. So you get to increase the product consumption. Ultimately, that will help you drive upgrades and cross-sells as well. The other 2 major audiences, sales being one of them, you have to enable the sales team to articulate that messaging and consistent value proposition across the funnel, so that when anyone sits with a customer, they're hearing the same value proposition, the same benefits. And of course, demand generation. As Maria mentioned earlier, without these assets, we can't help drive leads, right? So we have to make sure that your assets are targeted to the correct personas and talking to those personas in the right way, meaning we understand your pain points, we understand your problems. Here's how we help solve those challenges. So let's talk a little bit about personas. Without personas, you don't really know who it is that you're targeting, right? And there's a big distinction between buyers and users. Hillary mentioned it. I know that when I joined Drilling Info, we talked about customers in a big bucket. And it's not really as effective as talking about buyers and users. So the buyer has a decision-making authority and obviously a budget to purchase the product. And what they care about is very different typically than what the user cares about. For example, the buyer might care about how many different technologies they have to integrate and how it affects their budget. And a user might say, well, I want it to be easy to use, right? They're looking at what the UI is of the product. So it's really important to develop those target personas. So some best practices for persona development: interviewing actual customers, right? It's an obvious one. Attending those customer events, you can have focus groups, etc. But I know me personally, I came from network security before I joined Drilling Info, and so I had to learn oil and gas. And the easiest way to do that, I went to all the major E&P companies, so Chevron, those kinds of things, and I actually read their job boards. I went through the job descriptions. So let's say they had a VP of asset development posted, right? You could understand what the company wanted from this person, what their responsibilities would be like, and what their day-to-day would be like. And it really helped me become familiar with the market. I also read then LinkedIn and read resumes, and actually joked with Maria that everyone was going to think I was looking for a job because I was just reading LinkedIn all day and printing off resumes. But it really helped me get familiar with what my customers' pain points were going to be and get in their shoes. That would be, it's a good way to understand a new market. Of course, as I mentioned before, you got to differentiate between those people that can purchase the product, have decision maker authority, versus the users. There's also influencers that you can throw in there. But to keep it simple for our sales team, I really broke it down into those 2 major buckets. For the target buyer profile, here what to take away from it. So many times people get caught up in what the title is. And it's not about the title, it's about the role. So you want to really understand what this person's profile looks like and what their day-to-day responsibilities are. That's the only way that you could really figure out what their pain points can be and how you can help them solve those pain points with the solutions that your company is offering. The buyer profiles, again, different from the user profiles, and the pain points are usually vastly different as well. So let's talk about go-to-market strategy. So the go-to-market strategy is really, really important, and it's got to be comprehensive. As was mentioned before, it can't just be, you know, someone's on top of their day job and nice to have. The go-to-market strategy is really a forcing function for the entire organization to figure out who they're trying to target, what they're trying to target them with, and everything to a tactical level is like, what is the pricing going to be? Is it going to be included in a product? Is it going to be an add-on? That sort of thing. This strategy is so comprehensive, it really becomes a single source of truth from everything else that's developed, and you guys will see the assets here in a minute. But it's really important to have a framework to build that. So best practices for go-to-market strategy development. Of course, interviewing all the relevant stakeholders. Maria mentioned it, and I think Hillary mentioned it as well. The key there, though, is that you have to realize, and this is the toughest part about product marketing and why certain people are very talented at it. So everyone's giving you their slice of the pie. They're going to give you, you know, speeds and feeds or the things that they fall in love with. Sometimes you talk to a developer and they've worked really hard, right? And so they're going to explain to you what this product is from their slice of the pie, and you have to look at it holistically. There's really synthesizing all that information, making sure it's in English, making sure it actually addresses customer problems is one of the toughest parts of the job, but it's also one of the most rewarding. I would say something that works really well is you have to be pedantic and almost annoying and ask the same question 10 different ways so that you can understand what it is that we're trying to solve with the product, right? Otherwise, it just doesn't work. Again, it's a holistic look at how you're solving customers' problems and what are those unique value propositions. And so you just have to, it's a grind sometimes, but it's really rewarding to see those subject matter experts start to understand after they've sat with you a couple times, and then they get better and better at it, and so everyone wins. All right, so a go-to-market plan. These are all, this is not comprehensive so far on the customer-facing asset side over here on the right. We've got some products here, Drilling Info, that have 53 assets, for example. So it's not comprehensive, but I highlighted as many of the most important ones as I could. On the left-hand side, you've got the internal tools, right? And so there's a go-to-market document, which you're going to see sample slides here in a minute. You got the buyer persona and what their pain points are, user personas and what their pain points are, messaging and value props. Again, these things have to be unique and customer-focused on here's how we solve your problem. Features and benefits, we'll go over a SWOT, discovery questions, pricing, and several other things. As I said, a lot of times these go-to-market plans are actually a forcing function for the organization to all get aligned and understand, okay, do we have the pricing? Do we know how we're going to sell this? How we're going to physically go to market with it? How are we going to launch it? The go-to-market plan also includes a launch, and you'll see that shortly. You know, everything from a high-level strategy to tactical things like, is there a campaign in Salesforce? Do we have the pricing correct, the entitlements, that sort of thing. Okay, sample product overview. What I want you to take away from this is the thing about product overviews, and this may sound simple, but they need to be written in plain English. You need to be able to walk over to your neighbor's house, talk to your mother-in-law, and tell them exactly what the product does, who it's for, and why it's important. Again, this is one of those that it takes a lot of work to interview subject matter experts, product managers, developers, that sort of thing, to develop. The other thing I encourage my team to do, and it's always been helpful, is we actually all log into the product and experience it ourselves so that we know from a layman or someone that wouldn't even know the product how it would feel and how we should explain it. Value proposition. So I've got two value propositions to show you today. This one, I chose it as an example because it's got those visual signposts. So as I mentioned earlier, every subject matter expert is going to give you their slice of the pie, and they're going to tell you what they think, you know, the things are that are unique to the product. You've got to synthesize all those and figure out what are the key three that that will help. This helps the sales team understand, you know, okay, these are the benefits that I can articulate to the customer, and it helps ensure consistency. We use these visual signposts to help for memory's sake, and you want it to be unique and, again, address a problem with a true benefit. The next one I wanted to show you guys is it's got concrete numbers. So anytime you can use metrics, you all may know that sometimes people think marketing is fluffy. So we want to use things like, it's going to save you 12 months of time and X amount of dollars. Now you have to back that up with things like ROI calculators, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But if you've got the metrics to show it, always use it in your value proposition. It's always going to make it much stronger, and it's going to help you be more competitive in the market. A lot of people still don't use value propositions that are concrete enough to give you succinct numbers of how it will help. So the value prop is really important. Sample features and benefits. This slide is just to show you that that internal jargon, right, whether it's, you know, permit activity and statistics or what have you, that feature needs to be communicated with the benefit. This table actually becomes, it's used in a lot of our assets. It becomes the back page of our spec sheet, but that way any customer or prospect could pick up this, whatever asset this lands in, and understand, okay, this is what they mean by that. This is how it helps me in my day-to-day job. So let's talk about SWOT. So competitive analysis can be, you know, a department in and of itself. There's a ton of assets that you can develop, but every go-to-market should have at least a SWOT in it. What the SWOT does is really set up what are the strengths and weaknesses that are internal to the organization, and then what are the opportunities and threats that are external to the organization. The key here on sometimes this is difficult to do just from a, you know, a lot of people maybe may not see what the weaknesses to the product are, or that there are blind spots. So sometimes you have to be a little bit contrarian and maybe guide the direction, kind of lead the witness and see how they react to it. I know I've seen this over and over again. Many times we may not outline a lot of weaknesses, and then there is a, you know, a small niche competitor that comes up in the market, and everyone's like, oh, I didn't realize that was, you know, a blind spot in the product. I didn't realize that that could happen. That became a threat. And so it's really good to, again, as a forcing function for the product management team, for sales, as you're gathering these inputs, for us to talk about what is the right strategy that we need to have with this product so that you can avoid threats whenever possible. So that's why the SWOT is very helpful. Again, it's an internal tool only, but it just really helps to have those discussions and with the teams. So discovery questions. This is also an internal tool included in the go-to-market plan. What you want them to be is open-ended questions, conversation starters, so that the team does not have, you know, yes or no answers to these questions. Sales uses this. Typically, inside sales uses it a lot, but all of the sales team will use it to start conversations with their customers. The other interesting thing that actually at Drilling Info we experience is the demand generation team use this as an internal tool for themselves, but they created thought leadership pieces from these questions. So a lot of times for your thought leadership pieces, you don't want it to be, right, too product-y or too salesy, meaning that, you know, it gets down to the nitty-gritty details quickly. But if we're talking at a high level, what are the big problems the customer's having? It helps really develop that thought leadership content. So that was really good use of this. Now we're going to talk about these sample assets from our go-to-market document that is the single source for all of these. So here's a sampling of kind of all of the assets that are developed. As I mentioned earlier, we've got some products at Drilling Info that have over 50 assets, and that's everything from an infographic that is used as a hook on a landing page to get people to want to submit a form and read a white paper, to a spec sheet, to a customer case study, to a how-to video, etc. The key with the assets is a couple things. You want to think about them in 4 different kind of segments. So you want thought leadership pieces that will act as hooks, like an infographic, and people will want to understand more about your product. You need gated and ungated assets. You need something that is meaty enough where it could be a payoff behind a gate, and you need something before the gate, obviously, to interest people. And then there's also customer engagement assets. So, for example, how-to videos, my team and I create those, and it's truly just engaging customers that are already familiar with our product to figure out how to do something more in the product. So there's a slew of assets that product marketing can create. Here's a couple more samples. The infographic that you see on the right was used on a landing page. It was actually used very successfully by our demand gen team. So it was the hook on a landing page, and then we thematically created a white paper and a couple other assets that were behind a submit form, and that helped drive a lot of leads and business and revenue for Drilling Info. All right, guys, don't worry. I only have 165 more slides. Kidding. All right, so the launch plan is really important for the go-to-market. As I said, the go-to-market is that strategy, all-encompassing thing, but if you don't know how you're physically going to launch the product, it's not going to work. So the go-to-market plan is a forcing function for, okay, how are we going to launch this? This next slide kind of shows you some dependencies and alignment that needs to happen within the organization with a rough timeline. I recommend, 12 weeks out to start this process, to do it the right way, and you need to have alignment with product management. We need to understand what are the market problems that we're trying to solve, right? The positioning, that sort of thing. Then product marketing takes over and starts developing the go-to-market strategy, the launch plan, which we'll actually cover a timeline here shortly, the customer-facing assets, sales tools, etc. You want to train your sales team before the product is out, and it's not a best practice to surprise your sales team, but you don't want to train them too soon because they're also sales, right? So they've got to pay attention to their customers, and if you give them too much runway, they will forget. Ultimately, demand generation, as I mentioned before, is one of our biggest internal customers, and so you need to make sure that they have all the assets they need to promote the product. And what are the goals of the product, right? If it's something that is just in addition to current customers, you're going to treat that very different than something that, we need to hit X amount of leads with X amount of revenue. So the launch life cycle, the key takeaways that I want you to look at this slide, this is how we look at it. So there's a lot of things happening parallel path and simultaneously, and how we look at it is, okay, who are the internal customers that we have, and what are the timelines that we need to meet for those internal customers? The other key thing to look at is sometimes an engineering deploy can happen and the launch and the public promotion doesn't have to happen on the same day. We've got target personas. The cool thing that we started this year around March is that we implemented a technology that allows us to target customers within the application. So once you've logged into the SaaS platform, we can create a campaign for a specific customer set because we understand their persona and what their target pain points are. And we can create assets that will help them be more effective at their job. And I'm going to show you metrics on that here in a minute. It's been pretty interesting because the take rate is so high because it's in-app and it's immediately, kind of presented to them. How we target to all customers can be different, and so we outline it separately in the launch lifecycle here. And then, of course, there's the external promotion where you've got things like, digital paid advertisements, the press release, industry analysts, the media, etc., that we can also look at for product launches. All right, measurement. Measurement is really important. So we create a bunch of assets, and sometimes, depending on, let's say you're entering a new market, targeting a new persona, you've got to experiment. So you create a bunch of assets and you've got to see what works. And you have to work really closely with demand generation to figure out, okay, let's come up with a plan on what we think the best campaign is to target, and you've got to experiment. And the experimenting actually makes it pretty fun because then you can figure out what the most effective, what works and what doesn't, and then create more assets, for the market that are working. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the in-app promotion channels and metrics, and what we're looking at there is impressions. So how many times has this asset been served up to our customer base? In-app, it's truly only customer engagement, but it is really interesting to see the take rate, and I'll talk to that about it in a minute. Obviously, we look at clicks and click-through rate as well. We've got the digital paid, right? Whether you're doing a Google ad or a Facebook ad or what have you, and you're looking at the views and the interactions, how many likes did you get, shares, that sort of thing. And then the organic, digital organic. And we look at views, submits, and conversion rates there. So this product right here, this executive summary dashboard for you guys to look at. So we launched this product roughly, we started really putting heavy development and launching it in April. And what the chart shows is what the NPS score was, Net Promoter Score, how many users we have total and how many unique users. So you want returning users. Obviously, you want customers to keep coming back to the platform and you want to drive usage, but you also want new customers to jump in and start using the platform. So since April, we've had over a 75% increase in those unique monthly users, and that's based on all of the in-app promotions that we do. So we do a variety of videos as well as case study PDFs as well as tours. So you can actually click by click kind of use a walk me workflow. And the same thing, we see how many customer visits return total monthly. So we're over 100% there. The in-app impressions that you'll see all the way to the left, you know, it's almost 50,000. So that's how many times we've served up the asset. And then the click-through rate, which is 5.5%. And now the new business leads, that seems like a misnomer because I just told you that this was all for customers. We track it on this dashboard just to see how many, because the demand generation takes our assets and actually promotes them externally, we track it here to see how many new business leads we're getting. And so that's an external to the application function. But we do get people that are interested in the new product and then fill out the form. And so that's how many new business leads we've created with the go-to-market assets as well. All right, so some key takeaways to wrap up here. So of course, product marketing is a hub, right? Not only for gathering inputs, but also providing information to the whole organization. It's not just for sales, customers, and prospects. You've got demand generation, product managers, even other R&D development departments. I know that they recently had us post all of our go-to-market documents on our intranet here so that employees could be educated about the value of Drilling Info and how we help our customers. You have to have alignment across all of the departments that I mentioned, right? Without that alignment, you're not going to be as effective as you could be. And then talk about developing compelling content. You have to understand who your buyers are, who your users are, put yourself in their shoes and make content that speaks to them, right? And it can be very different by persona, whether it's a buyer or user, and by market. You don't want to create generic content that won't be effective. And so just creating that specific content and testing is really interesting to see what works and what doesn't. Enabling the sales team is, of course, very important. The other great thing about our sales enablement is that we get to have feedback from the sales team. So we work really closely with them on what's working and what's not, and we can iterate and refine our content and our documents. And even throughout the go-to-market training, sometimes we have very vocal salespeople that will give us, ideas about new things that we need to be doing. And of course, measure. Without the measurement piece of this, you just can't be effective. So you do have to, you do have to test and figure out what's working and what's not. But the measurement piece helps you understand, okay, how many leads are you driving? What's working? What are people looking at? What are they clicking through and what's not? And that way you can refine your strategy from there. So thank you guys for your time today. That's all I had so far.
I have some questions, Martha, that have been coming in. But if other folks have questions, please feel free to post them and I will ask Martha to answer them. So Martha, the first question is, you talked about aligning with product management, the sales team, and demand generation. Could you talk specifically about, as the head of product marketing, what specifically do you do with product management? How do you interact with them? What information do you get from them? How do you get their input and buy-in to what you're doing? And could you talk about exactly the same with sales and then with the demand gen parts of the marketing department? So how do you align with each of those members? What kind of meetings do you have? What kind of data do you get from them? Just a much more rich explanation of that alignment.
Sure, of course. So I'm really embedded in the product management team, and I say embedded because I attend our product team's staff meeting every week. And in that meeting, I have a set agenda item where we just go through, okay, product marketing, are there new products coming? Is there something we need to talk about? The meeting is an hour long and I only have 5 minutes, but it helps everyone on the team know that product marketing is here and exists. And then on top of having that meeting, we have constant one-on-one. So the way the team is divided is based on product. They each have individual products they support, and so they week meetly with their product manager, and that just helps the alignment be happening all the time. Because sometimes in a SaaS world too, everything works fast, and it could be someone just came up with a feature, but we stay in front of it. We also hold, which sounds like a lot of meetings, but we also hold a weekly product launch meeting. The product launch meeting is not just product managers. You've got the entitlement team there. You have the support team there. There's someone from sales. There's someone from our sales university. It's a cross-functional meeting so that everyone sits down and says, okay, what's coming up in the next 6 weeks? And we treat it on a 6-week basis so that it's not overwhelming. But, have we met all the key deadlines that we need to meet? And like I said, it's everyone from entitlement to support to product managers to product marketing. But we're the ones that drive that meeting. And so it just helped create an awareness in the organization of, oh, hey, look, this is the forcing function that we need to attend this meeting. And basically, if it's not discussed in the launch meeting, it's probably not being launched. So, people learned that way. So that's with the product team. For sales, I have bi-weekly meetings with the support team. So the support team is important, and I'm going to talk about that for a minute, because they're using their day-to-day life is dealing with the users. And so sometimes the support team uncovers things that we need to either dig in deeper, whether it's from a bug to, hey, maybe we need a how-to video about this. It would help our customers. And so we meet with them twice a month. They're also in our launch meeting once a week, but we meet with them to make sure that we're close to them. And I meet with all the sales leaders monthly to figure out what's working and what's not, because a sales tool is very different than an external asset that I can measure with how many clicks and views, etc. This is really anecdotal, so I have to just sit and interview style what's working, what's not. Is there something that you feel like would be working or that you would need? I also get a lot of information on those calls about competitors, like what the competition is doing, whether it's they're undercutting us on price, or this is what I'm facing. And sometimes the sales guys don't necessarily know what they need, but they're good at telling me their experience, and then I can figure out if there's an asset or a sales tool or something that we need to develop. So that was demand gen. So Laura Hamilton, who reports to Maria as well, her and I meet every week on what are their needs, and we map out campaigns. And I think just being on the same team really, part of this, we're just very embedded together, and we work on things to figure out what's the best way to target whatever it is that we're trying to go after, and what are those business goals, and creating a campaign with the right assets and content that is needed.
So if I could just add on top of that, yeah. Hillary, so my view is that we've got to have demand generation and product marketing completely embedded within their key stakeholders. So while they report to me, Laura Hamilton and that whole demand generation team meet several times a week, actually, with their key stakeholders on the sales side. Martha, as she mentioned, she attends the product management staff meeting and then has specific weekly one-on-one meetings with each of the key product areas of the company. So my view is that all of our teams, the key folks on the marketing team, you are just completely well served, and in fact you need to have 100% alignment with your key stakeholders, so that from a demand gen perspective, sales and demand generation are completely aligned. They meet several times a week to see what campaigns are working, what's not working, and they iterate. These are the leads that we expect to come in this week. Here's what we tried. Here's what didn't work. Let's do more of this, less of that. So total alignment there. And then the same thing on the product marketing side. And that is a recipe or a model that has worked really, really well in every situation I've ever been in here at Drilling Info and then in my prior companies. When you don't have that alignment with your key internal stakeholders, things start to fall apart and there are gaps. So we all make sure here that we've got very tight linkages into all of those stakeholders.
Thank you. That makes a ton of sense. The next question is about just the org structure. So Maria, I know in the past you've talked about your overall organization, but Martha, within product marketing, could you describe how many products you have, and then how you align product marketers against those products, and just the percentage of the overall marketing budget that's spent on product marketing, which obviously includes content creation?
Yeah, you got it. So we have over 15 products. And we typically align, I look at synergies, right? We've got products that are closely related. And so the product marketing manager, I try to make it as efficient as possible, looking at, so DI Basic and DI Plus, which I know doesn't mean anything to you guys, those two products overlap a lot. So we've got one person that manages those. And then we have another person that manages all the add-on modules, for example. And but when we go to launch a new market, so we're going to enter in a new segment soon, we look at synergies on, well, if my product marketing person already knows a lot about land, for example, then I'm going to use that person for this new market that we're launching because it's going to help. So it's just really looking at how the products are structured and if there's synergies that you can use. And that's because we run a lean team. We also have a person in-house that helps us create content. So videos, we have a guy that creates videos. I would say it's at least 50% of his job. And videos have been huge for us, and I think where marketing is going, right? I mean, PDFs can work still, but just having that level of interactivity and being able to see how people can use the videos and how they can use your products are great. And so we've got a content person that creates videos only. The rest of the team does kind of the writing and creating the assets. We also have third-party tools that we use, for example, or third-party external contractors, whether it be for graphic design or copy editing or that sort of thing. I would say that our product marketing budget is about less than 10% of the marketing budget. So it's pretty lean, but my team creates all of the content. We do all the physical writing. I have experience that it doesn't work when you hire external writers because they're just too far removed.
And just another quick comment. The reason why the budget looks skewed like that, this is a critical function, but that's not where we put the bulk of the dollars. The bulk of the dollars go towards demand generation and external promotions, events, road shows, things that we do to promote. And so the real cost of product marketing is with the people that we have, and then with the third parties that we have to generate the assets, whether it's graphics or additional video or copy editing, whatever. So that just doesn't cost that much money. That's why it looks skewed, but we've created how many pieces, how many assets?
In the last 2 years, we have over 300.
Over 300 specific unique assets. So it's a big volume of work with not a whole lot of budget.
That's great. Actually, would you go back to the slide that talks about your go-to-market plans? And you had a series of internal tools and a series of customer-facing assets. I think it was just as you
this
go into the go-to-market section. Yeah, I think so. That's right. Yeah. So could you talk, Martha, a little bit about those internal tools and the customer-facing assets? The time that it takes to develop these if somebody's starting from nowhere, where would you suggest that the highest value is initially? Is it doing the SWOT? Is it doing the buyer persona? Is it doing the user persona? And then also, what do the sales guys find the most valuable when it comes to them selling?
Sure. So I would say that, well, there's no shortcut, right? It takes quite a bit of work. If someone is 100%, focused on this, it's a couple weeks of work to develop that go-to-market document. The go-to-market document includes all those internal tools that you see on the left. And so I'm not trying to give you a peanut butter answer, but the buyer personas, the messaging and value props, the SWOT and the discovery questions are just must, which is why are the ones that I highlighted. The sales team finds those go-to-market documents really, really valuable. I would say they like the SWOTs a lot, but things like the discovery questions, I always get good feedback from those. And then those buyer personas. So before we had product marketing at Drilling Info, like I said, we talked about customers kind of in a blanket bucket, and so that really helped them understand that the care abouts were different and differentiating between buyers and users. So they really study those as well, especially if you have a new salesperson coming on board. It makes that tool so easy for them. They just go and read the persona document and understand who they're trying to target. So Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for which ones you should spend time developing. It's that go-to-market document, but that includes all of those things. And so without all of those, you just can't be as effective.
But one of the things that
Go ahead, sorry.
I'm going to ask her a question that I think clarifies this. One of the things that's the most time consuming is interviewing all of the stakeholders that you need to do in order to go develop that single source of truth.
Right,
so if you
absolutely.
take all of the interviews that you do with, internal stakeholders, customers, etc., and then developing the document, right, and then getting it vetted and approved, I don't know, what period of time do you think that is?
I mean, a couple weeks for a senior person that's done this a lot. Right? And the interviewing probably takes as long as the translating because you have sets and sets of notes, but I keep going back to everyone's giving you their slice of the pie and you have to look at it holistically. And so it, takes work.
Martha, to what extent do you involve the customers in reviewing some of the final work product so that they could sort of give you their point of view on the SWOTs as well as the user personas and their kind of daily lives?
Sure. So for SWOTs, we actually typically don't review those with customers. Now, we get anecdotal feedback, like I said, from sales about competitive things, but we try not to, we try to keep that close to the vest. For personas, as well as just assets in general, we actually have done focus groups in our Houston office, and it's really cool to see what messaging resonates with them, what value proposition resonates with them, how they want to see things. So in oil and gas, this might be obvious to everyone, but there's the great crew change, right? And so we had a focus group recently where we had like a 28-year-old guy and probably a gentleman that was old, 50s or 60s, and they had vastly different opinions about how they wanted to receive things and consume things. And it was just interesting to kind of see the proof point of that. And so that's the other reason why we create actually so many derivatives of the assets that come from that go-to-market document, because everyone that you target, whether it's because of their age or their demographic or the market, they want to consume information differently. So for our personas, we review it with them. We kind of vet it with these focus groups as well. But it's even interesting to say if you're looking at a role, for example, it depends what that person's demographic looks like, even to how they want to receive the information, even if they have the same role. Does that make sense?
It definitely does. I've got two more questions and then we'll wrap up. The first question was, do the sales guys, when they get onboarded, have to take a buyer persona test? Are they using any of your documents whereby they have to understand those buyer personas and the discovery questions? And how do you test that that information has been internalized so that it's useful in a sales context?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got two ways to do that. We actually have a sales university department that we also work closely with. They're one of our biggest internal customers, and they use all of this content to create certifications. So you actually have to get certified to sell a product, meaning that you have to understand the buyer personas, the user personas, the messaging, the value prop, and they get tested. So that's one key way to do it. The other thing that we actually do is we have a tool that measures what has been used by a salesperson. So I get to see if they've gone to the persona deck, because they need to study it and they need to understand it. So have they gone to it? Have they downloaded it? Have they used it? And how many times have they looked at it? And that really helps me understand what's working and what's not. Because sometimes, let's say there's an asset out there, the persona deck isn't one of them, but let's say there's an asset out there that doesn't get used. I can go and ask physically, like I walk over to them and say, hey, why isn't this being used? Why aren't you using it? Why haven't you looked at it? And sometimes it could be oversight. They didn't know it was there. Or it could be, well, you know what? It's not working because X, Y, Z reasons. And so if you proactively seek feedback out that way, it's really, really helpful. But again, having that tool that measures what's being used and what's not helps us as well.
And that tool is an internal tool. I think you guys have Litmus as an overall content management system internally. Are you looking to see which, unlike on the customer-facing side where from a demand gen perspective, you know what documents or customers are reading or downloading or which webinars they're signing up for, how do you measure what's being used by your internal constituents?
So recently we launched actually iPresent, Hillary, and iPresent actually tells you, it's really interesting, it even tells you how much time is being spent on a slide. And so that's what we use for our sales team. It provides you metrics at the user level. So I can see, Maria, ex-salesperson, has looked at this page so long, that sort of thing. So we look at all those metrics, and it's really metrics driven.
Very helpful. And talking about metrics, the last question is, how do you measure metric and compensate your product marketing folks? So how do you know that they are successful? How do they know that they're successful?
That's a good question. So of course, there's anecdotal feedback, right? We want to make sure our product managers need to feel like we understand the product as well as they do. It's not, I always make fun of us because I'm like, we're not diet product marketing, right? We really need to understand everything about the product, how it's structured, that sort of thing. And that's really anecdotal, but it's also, all of the team, whenever we're rolling out a new product, if they're in charge of that product, they have to do the go-to-market training with sales. That means that they have to be able to demo the product, they have to walk through the go-to-market document, explain the buyers, the users, the messaging and value props, etc. And then we use our metrics, like with the demand generation team, to understand what assets are working and what assets aren't. My team's also always in the tool, so we have to constantly be learning it. I just feel like if you don't put yourself in the shoes of the customer, there's no way you can be effective at your job. And so it's looking at it multifaceted, if you will, right? Are you doing the right thing for the sales team, enabling them the way they need to be enabled, creating the assets that need to be created? The product managers feel like you understand their product as well as you do, and then creating assets that are actually working in market. And when they're not, let's adjust and figure out what needs to be working.
On that score, one more question just came in, which is, could you describe some of the tools that you are using? You mentioned this iPresenter, but what other internal software products or tools are the product marketers using to create content, to deliver content, etc.? I mean, PowerPoint, obvious, but anything else?
Yes, we're PowerPoint junkies for sure. So we've got iPresent. The in-app tool that we're using is called User IQ. User IQ helps us create those in-app actual ads and workflows and that sort of thing. Of course, there's InDesign tools and that sort of thing. We recently got Brandfolder as well. It's kind of an asset management system. And what you mentioned earlier, Hillary, is that we have Litmus. So Litmus is technically a learning management system, but we really use it as a knowledge base for our customers. So product marketing owns that. It's training.drillinginfo.com, right? And so our customers have to log in, and that's where we have our 300 plus assets, and that's where we get to see metrics on what's working and what's not. So I would say at a high level, those are the big tools that we're using, besides like InDesign and things like that for actual layout and content creation.
Got it. Very helpful. Obviously a lot of work to do, and as a result of it being so much work and so detailed, and you're such a nexus between sales, customers, and product, product marketing is a linchpin in their organizations, and therefore, and honestly not done well given the complexity and given the level of detail that you need to go at. If you were any of our companies just beginning to build a product marketing function, could you give any final advice?
Ooh, final advice. I would say think big picture. It is very detailed. There is a lot of things that have to go into it. But you have to understand, okay, what is the company trying to accomplish as a whole, right? Because we articulate the entire Drilling Info value story. And so you have to look at the products holistically as a family, and what is the goal of the company, and how do you want to position yourselves, and then start building down from there. Top down really, really worked for me here, and so that's what I would recommend.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Maria and Martha. This is phenomenal. If folks have any further questions, I know both Maria and Martha are available to answer those questions, and you can feel free to email them directly. Alexa Bennett at Insight has their contact details. And Martha and Maria, are you okay if folks request this document to send it out to them, or do you want to make sure that it's sanitized before you do so?
I think it's fine. Yeah, no problem at all.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Very helpful. You guys have been really inspirational when it comes to product marketing, and I hope everybody can reach the same bar that you've set.
All right.
Thank you so much. Happy to do it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening, afternoon, and weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.